Title: The Forgotten Files, Part 3, The Whispering Tunnel. Prologue. Some tunnels lead to forgotten places. Others lead to something far worse. In the outskirts of Black Hollow, an abandoned railway tunnel has been the center of urban legends for decades. They say if you stand inside at midnight, you'll hear whisper soft, inviting, and undeniably not human. Most believe it's just the wind. Others, the echoes of something trapped within. But for those who listened too closely, they were never seen again. This is the story of one who did. Chapter 1. The Urban Legend. The town of Black Hollow was no stranger to eerie folklore. The locals spoke in hushed tones about a railway tunnel, long abandoned and swallowed by time, hidden deep within the overgrown woods at the town's edge. It had been sealed for years, yet somehow the rumors never died. Teenagers dared each other to step inside. Some claimed to have heard whispers. Others swore they saw shadows moving just beyond the reach of their flashlights. Most came back, shaken but safe. Some never returned at all. The latest disappearance was Daniel Grayson, a thrill-seeking journalist drawn to the macabre. His last known location? The Whispering Tunnel. Chapter 2. The Descent. Daniel's fascination with the tunnel wasn't random. He had been investigating strange occurrences tied to Black Hollow for months. The whispers, the vanishing hikers, the old camera found in the woods, everything seemed connected. Armed with a recorder, a flashlight, and a GoPro strapped to his chest, Daniel set out to document the truth. He reached the tunnel just before midnight, the air unnaturally still. The entrance was a gaping void, its jagged edges swallowed by thick vines and decay. "All right, let's see if the legends are real," he muttered into the recorder. He stepped inside. The moment he crossed the threshold, a gust of air, stale and ice-cold, brushed against his face as if the tunnel itself had exhaled. His skin prickled with unease, and for a split second, he swore he saw the shadows near the entrance shifting, closing behind him like an unseen door sealing shut. The moment his feet touched the damp ground, the silence deepened. The outside world seemed to dissolve, as if the tunnel was severed from reality itself. Each step echoed unnaturally, as if the space around him wasn't just empty, but watching. Then came the first whisper. It wasn't just a sound, it was a vibration, curling around his ears like a breathless murmur. The words slithered into his skull, bypassing his ears entirely. "Daniel, come closer." Soft, almost playful. "Daniel." He froze. His name. It had said his name. Chapter 3. The whispers grow louder. Daniel's breath hitched, but he forced himself to move forward. "It's just my mind playing tricks," that's what he told himself. But the whispers didn't stop. They slithered along the tunnel walls, multiplying, overlapping, some high-pitched, others guttural. They didn't make sense. Some words were in languages Daniel didn't recognize. Others were disturbingly familiar. His own voice, speaking back to him, repeating words he never said. The inflection was off just slightly, but enough to send a chill crawling down his spine. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't a playback. It was something else, something mimicking him. The words stretched unnaturally, as if his own voice had been twisted, reshaped by something that didn't fully understand human speech. Then it changed. The tone deepened, warping, shifting into something almost unrecognizable. But it still carried his voice. Daniel's throat tightened. His fingers curled into fists as the whispers layered over each other, forming a chorus of distorted versions of himself. Some were murmuring too softly to comprehend. Others spoke in a garbled mess of syllables. And just one was laughing. He swung the flashlight wildly, but the beam only illuminated damp stone and endless darkness. No people, no movement. Just the whispers, growing closer. Something tapped against the tunnel wall, a deliberate, rhythmic knock, as though something deep within was signaling its approach. Daniel's breath hitched. The knocking continued, faster now, building into a frantic, maddening rhythm. Chapter 4. The Thing in the Tunnel. Daniel pressed on, adrenaline drowning his fear. He had come too far to turn back now. His GoPro caught strange, anomalous shadows darting too fast for the eye, movements in the corners of the frame that vanished when he turned. Something was there. The whispers morphed into laughter, but not human laughter. It was layered, overlapping voices of different pitches, some high and childlike, others deep and guttural, creating a distorted, inhuman harmony. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing through the tunnel walls as if the stone itself was mocking him. Some of the laughs started and stopped abruptly. Others stretched too long, warping into unnatural wails that sent icy dread crawling up Daniel's spine. Mocking, knowing. Then his flashlight flickered. For a split second, the tunnel was pitch black. When the light returned, something stood in the distance. At first, Daniel thought it was a person, but its shape was wrong. Too tall, too thin. Its limbs stretched unnaturally, its head tilting in a way that bones shouldn't allow. Then it moved. Not walking, sliding. Closer. Chapter 5. Run. Daniel turned and ran, faster than he had ever run in his life. His footsteps pounded against the damp ground, the echoes bouncing off the tunnel walls and distorting into something unnatural, something not entirely his own. The darkness seemed to stretch, warping the tunnel into an endless void, the exit nowhere in sight. Behind him, the sound of something moving, not running, but sliding, gliding, shifting through the shadows with unnatural speed. The whispers turned into guttural breaths, low and ragged, as though whatever followed him was gaining momentum. Then came the footsteps, his own, but out of sync, repeating just a fraction of a second after each of his, as if something was mimicking him, chasing him, waiting for him to slow down. The tunnel stretched longer than it should have. He should have seen the entrance by now. But all he saw was darkness. The whispers turned into screams. Some begged. Some laughed. Some called his name. And then his flashlight died. Total blackness. The last thing his GoPro captured was Daniel falling. His scream cut off abruptly. Then, static. But not silence. Beneath the static, buried so faintly it was almost imperceptible, was a sound-ragged breathing, followed by a distorted, wet gurgle, as if something was trying to speak through the interference. And then, just before the feed completely cut out, there was a faint, echoing voice, Daniel's own, warped and distant, repeating one final phrase, "I see you," but not silence. Beneath the static, buried so faintly it was almost imperceptible, was a sound-ragged breathing, followed by a distorted, wet gurgle, as if something was trying to speak through the interference. Chapter 6. The Aftermath. The next morning, Daniel's camera was found just outside the tunnel. The footage was intact, but Daniel was nowhere to be seen. A search party combed the area. No body, no tracks, nothing. His last recording? A chilling message, whispered in his own voice. Don't listen. The authorities ruled it an accident. The tunnel was sealed for good. But if you listen closely, deep in the night, you might still hear his voice calling for help. And some say those who pass by the tunnel after dark sometimes notice something unusual. Faint scratches appear along the tunnel's sealed entrance, long and jagged, as if something inside is trying to claw its way out. Others have claimed to see a shadowy figure standing just beyond the overgrown trees, watching in complete silence. But if you blink, it's gone. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind dies and the world is silent, the tunnel reopens itself. A faint glow flickers deep inside, and if you stand too close, you might hear it, Daniel's voice, distorted and desperate, whispering, asterisk, I'm still here, but it's not me anymore. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind dies and the world is silent, the tunnel reopens itself. A faint glow flickers deep inside, and if you stand too close, you might hear it, Daniel's voice, distorted and desperate, whispering, I'm still here, but it's not me anymore. If you answer, you'll never come back.